Our story begins in a plane called Innistrad, a world of darkness, where horrors lurk in every shadow, and the night brings the promise of terror. Here, among the ancient forests and crumbling cathedrals, humanity struggles to survive against the forces that hunger for their flesh and souls. Spirits haunt the grounds, vampires stalk the moonlit nights, and werewolves prowl through the wild. Yet, even in this realm of truly unending night, there was once a light that guided the people, giving hope. That light was Avacyn, the Archangel and protector of Innistrad. Her story begins with Soren Markov, a vampire as old as Innistrad's darkest secrets. Though a creature of the night, he saw his world tipping into chaos that threatened even the vampires. For without humans, what would be left for them to feed upon? The balance would collapse, and Innistrad itself would be lost to an endless void. So Soren decided to create a guardian, one that could keep his world from crumbling into despair. With an ancient magic that stretched back to the dawn of time, Soren poured his power into crafting Avacyn. She emerged not as a mere servant, but as an archangel. Her very existence a promise, a covenant between light and darkness. She would protect humanity from the horrors that stalked the night, and in doing so, preserve the balance of Innistrad itself. She descended upon the land, wielding a silver blade and holy fire. The Church of Avacyn sprang up in her wake, a mighty institution dedicated to her worship and teachings. Cathedrals were erected, and holy wards were drawn around villages, keeping the evil at bay. With every prayer uttered in her name, Avacyn's light grew stronger, and the people found the courage to stand tall against the darkness. But no light can banish darkness forever, and even the purest guardian can be touched by shadow. As the years wore on, the wards and blessings that Avacyn and her church had placed upon the land began to weaken. The monsters grew bolder, as if driven by a new hunger, and fear once again seeped in the hearts of the people. Avacyn herself even began to change. She grew more rigid, more driven to cleanse all that she deemed impure. And soon her judgment not only fell upon the monstrous, but humanity itself. At first, the signs were subtle. A burned heretic here, a purged village there. But as time wore on, the purges grew more frequent and less discerning. The faithful who had once sought shelter beneath Avacyn's wings now feared her gaze. It was though as a dark force gripped her heart, twisting her purpose. Whispers spread that something terrible had crept into her divine being. A madness that drove her to destroy what she was meant to protect. The truth was far more terrible than any could have guessed. An ancient horror, an entity from beyond the known multiverse, had cast its shadow over Innistrad. Emrakul, the Eldrazi titan whose very presence distorted reality itself, had seeped into the plane's fabric. The effects were insidious, corrupting not only the minds of men, but also the soul of Avacyn herself. Villages that had once felt the comforting touch of Avacyn's blessing now trembled at the sight of her fiery descent. Even the most devout priests found themselves questioning their faith, caught between their loyalty to the church and the mounting horror of Avacyn's wrath. When Soren Markov returned to Innistrad, he found his world on the brink of ruin. The balance he had sought to maintain was shattered, with his greatest creation at the center of the chaos. The Archangel, whom he had crafted with such care and hope, was now a harbinger of despair. In his ancient heart, Soren knew there was only one way to restore the balance. Avacyn had to be undone. The confrontation took place in the Grand Cathedral of Thraben, a place where Avacyn's power was at its peak. Soren stood before her, a father and creator facing the child he had brought into the world. Her eyes, once filled with divine compassion, now glared at him with the cold fire of fanaticism. She spoke not as the protector of humanity, but as its judge. "Stand aside, creature of darkness," she commanded, raising her blade to the vampire who had birthed her. "You have no place here." But Soren did not raise his hand against her in anger. He reached out with the ancient magic that had first bound her to this world, seeking to unravel what he had made. The battle was fierce, with each clash of light and dark threatening to tear the cathedral asunder. Avacyn's fury was that of a righteous storm, but it was a storm driven by madness, not purpose. In the end, Soren's will proved stronger. With a final word of power, he severed the magic that held Avacyn together. Her form shimmered, her wings dissolving into a mist of radiant light. As she faded, her expression softened, as if some last remnant of her true self had returned. A single word escaped her lips, a word of forgiveness, or perhaps of regret, before she dissolved entirely, leaving nothing but a faint glow in the air where she had once stood. With Avacyn gone, the wards that had protected the people fell into ruin. The monsters that lurked in the shadows surged forth, unchecked and unchallenged. The church struggled to hold together, its leaders divided and its faithful scattered. The Archangel who had once been the savior of Innistrad had become its scourge, and now the plane was left to find a new way forward. Yet, even in her absence, Avacyn's memory did not fade. For as long as there are those who remember her, as long as her story is told in whispers and prayers, hope remains.